A 15-year-old boy stands in a school gymnasium, staring at a piece of paper taped to the wall. His eyes scan the list of names again and again. His name isn't there. He doesn't make the team he wanted. He walks home alone, locks himself in his room, and cries. That boy would one day be called the greatest basketball player who ever lived. But on that day, in that gym, he was just another kid who got told he wasn't good enough. This is the story of Michael Jordan and the humiliating rejection that lit the fire behind 6 championships, 5 MVP awards, and a legacy that changed sports forever. Have you ever been told you weren't ready? Have you ever been left off a list you desperately wanted to be on? Then you already understand exactly how this story begins. Michael Jeffrey Jordan was born on February 17, 1963, in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, the 4th of 5 children in the Jordan household. His father, James, worked at General Electric. His mother, Dolores, worked at a bank. They were not wealthy, but they instilled in their children a fierce, unshakable work ethic and a belief that discipline mattered more than talent. Young Michael idolized his older brother, Larry. Larry was shorter than Michael, but he was fast, strong, and relentless, and in backyard games, Larry beat Michael constantly. Those defeats stung. Michael has said many times that competing against Larry as a child shaped the competitive fire that would define his entire life. He didn't like losing, not to his brother, not to anyone. Their father, James, would later joke that Michael's competitiveness wasn't something he taught his son. It was simply who Michael was from the earliest years of his childhood. By the time Michael reached Emsley A. Laney High School in Wilmington, basketball had become his obsession. He wasn't the tallest kid, he wasn't the most polished, but he loved the game with an intensity that bordered on desperation. In the spring of 1978, as a sophomore, 15-year-old Michael tried out for the varsity basketball team. He believed he belonged there. Standing around 5 feet 10 or 11 inches tall at the time, he wasn't fully grown yet, and the coaching staff felt he wasn't ready for varsity competition. When the roster was posted, his name was missing. Instead, he was assigned to the junior varsity team, while a taller classmate, Leroy Smith, took the open varsity spot. For a boy who measured his worth by the game he loved, this was devastating. Jordan has spoken openly in interviews and in his own words about how deeply that rejection cut him. He went home, went into his room, and cried alone. His mother, Dolores, later recalled that he was hurt, embarrassed, and angry. Angry not at the coach, but at himself, at the idea that he had been judged and found lacking. Some retellings of this story claim he was cut from the team entirely. The more precise truth is this: he was not placed on the varsity roster he had hoped to make, and instead had to play junior varsity as a sophomore. To a proud, competitive 15-year-old, being left off the list he wanted felt exactly like failure. It felt like rejection. It felt like being told he wasn't good enough. And that feeling was very real, whatever label you put on it. Instead of quitting, instead of feeling sorry for himself for long, Michael made a decision. He was going to outwork everyone who had ever doubted him. That summer, something happened that changed everything. He grew, adding several inches to his frame. But height alone doesn't build champions. What Jordan did with that opportunity is what separated him from every other tall, talented teenager in America. He began waking up early, before school, to practice on the junior varsity court. He stayed on the court long after his teammates went home, sometimes playing pickup games against college-aged players just to test himself. He worked on his ball handling, his jump shot, his footwork, obsessively, repetitively, day after day. Former coaches and teammates from Laney High School would later describe a young man who trained with an intensity that looked less like a hobby and more like a mission. On the junior varsity team that season, Jordan reportedly scored well over 40 points in multiple games. A quiet signal, even then, of what was coming. The turning point in Michael Jordan's life wasn't a single dramatic moment of triumph. It was quieter than that, and in many ways, more powerful. It was the decision he made in his bedroom, after the tears had dried, to never let anyone put him in that position again. He turned humiliation into fuel, and he would return to that memory again and again for the rest of his career, as motivation whenever he needed an edge. By his junior year, Michael made the varsity team at Laney High School, and he didn't just make it, he dominated it. By his senior year, he was averaging around 25 points per game, becoming one of the most electrifying young talents in the state of North Carolina. He earned a spot in the McDonald's All-American Game in 1981, a showcase reserved for the best high school players in the entire country. College scouts started paying serious attention. The boy who once wasn't good enough for a varsity roster spot was now being recruited by some of the top basketball programs in America. He chose the University of North Carolina, playing under legendary head coach Dean Smith, a decision that would place him inside one of the most respected basketball programs in the country. And it was there, as a freshman, that Michael Jordan announced himself to the entire nation. On March 29, 1982, in the NCAA National Championship game against Georgetown University, a Georgetown team led by future NBA star Patrick Ewing, the score was tied late in the game. With time running out, the ball found its way to a freshman, a player still growing into his name. Michael Jordan rose up and hit the game-winning jump shot, giving North Carolina the national championship. He was 18 years old. That single shot became a symbol. The boy who had once been told he wasn't ready now stood at the center of the biggest stage in college basketball, and he delivered when it mattered most. He would go on to be named College Player of the Year in both 1983 and 1984, before leaving North Carolina early to enter the NBA draft. In 1984, Michael Jordan declared for the NBA draft. In one of the most infamous decisions in sports history, the Chicago Bulls selected him third overall, after the Houston Rockets took Hakeem Olajuwon, and the Portland Trail Blazers took Sam Bowie. Two teams passed on Michael Jordan. Portland's decision, in particular, would go down as one of the greatest draft mistakes in professional sports history. Jordan entered the NBA and immediately proved he belonged among the league's elite. He won Rookie of the Year for the 1984-85 season, averaging over 28 points per game as a rookie. In 1988, he was named NBA Most Valuable Player and NBA Defensive Player of the Year in the same season, a rare feat that showcased both his scoring brilliance and his relentless two-way effort. That same year, at the 1988 Slam Dunk Contest in Chicago, he won the event with a leap from the free throw line that remains one of the most iconic images in basketball history. But greatness doesn't arrive without more failure along the way. For years, Jordan and the Chicago Bulls were blocked from championship glory by the physical, dominant Detroit Pistons, a team that built an entire defensive strategy known as the Jordan Rules, specifically to stop him. The Bulls lost to the Pistons in the Eastern Conference playoffs in 1988, 1989, and 1990. It would have been easy to believe that individual brilliance wasn't enough, that he would never break through as a champion. He kept working. He got stronger in the weight room, adding muscle specifically to withstand the physical punishment the Pistons dealt him. He learned to trust his teammates, particularly forward Scottie Pippen, under new head coach Phil Jackson, who installed the triangle offense to make the Bulls less dependent on Jordan carrying the scoring load alone. And in the 1990-91 season, the Chicago Bulls finally broke through, sweeping the Pistons in the conference finals, and then defeating Magic Johnson's Los Angeles Lakers to win Jordan's first NBA championship. It was the beginning of one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. Between 1991 and 1998, Michael Jordan led the Chicago Bulls to 6 NBA championships in 8 seasons, including 2 separate three-peats, 3 consecutive titles, twice, in 1991 to 1993, and again in 1996 to 1998. He was named NBA Finals MVP all 6 times his team won the championship, a perfect record that remains unmatched in league history. He won 5 NBA regular season MVP awards. He was selected to the NBA All-Star team 14 times. He won 10 NBA scoring titles, more than any player in league history, including 7 consecutive scoring titles from 1987 to 1993. One moment from this era stands out as legendary even among legends. During Game 5 of the 1997 NBA Finals against the Utah Jazz, Jordan played through severe flu-like illness and dehydration, visibly exhausted and struggling to stand upright between plays. He still scored 38 points, including the game-winning three-pointer, leading the Bulls to victory in a performance now remembered simply as the flu game. It became one of the defining symbols of his will to win, regardless of physical condition. In between championship runs, Jordan shocked the world in October 1993 by retiring from basketball, just months after the sudden and shocking murder of his father, James, during a robbery in North Carolina. Jordan then pursued a career in professional baseball, playing minor league ball for the Birmingham Barons in 1994, a decision many in the media mocked at the time as a step down for a superstar. But in March 1995, he returned to the NBA, famously announcing his comeback with a 2-word statement, "I'm back." He then led the Bulls to 3 more championships in a row, from 1996 to 1998, capping his second three-peat with another game-winning shot in Game 6 of the 1998 Finals against the Utah Jazz. A shot now remembered simply as the last shot of his Bulls career. Off the court, Jordan's partnership with Nike, beginning in 1984, created the Air Jordan brand, which transformed sports marketing and sneaker culture forever. The original Air Jordan 1 released in 1985, and the brand has continued releasing new shoes every year since, generating billions of dollars in revenue decades after Jordan's playing career ended. His endorsement deals with companies like Nike, Gatorade, and Hanes made him one of the most recognizable commercial faces in the world throughout the 1990s. After a brief final chapter playing for the Washington Wizards from 2001 to 2003, Jordan retired permanently from the NBA at the age of 40. In 2006, he became a minority owner of the Charlotte Bobcats, and in 2010, he became the majority owner of the team, later renamed the Charlotte Hornets, making him the first former NBA player to become the majority owner of an NBA franchise. In 2014, Forbes reported that Jordan had become the first former athlete to reach billionaire status, driven largely by his ownership stake and his enduring Nike partnership. Michael Jordan was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2009. In his induction speech, he spoke about being left off that varsity roster as a sophomore, not with bitterness, but as the moment that shaped his entire mentality toward competition and work. He turned a painful teenage memory into a lifelong lesson he shared with the world, one that has been repeated in classrooms, locker rooms, and boardrooms ever since. His impact stretches far beyond statistics and championship banners. Jordan globalized basketball, turning the NBA into an international phenomenon, watched by hundreds of millions of people across continents that had barely followed the sport before his rise. He redefined what it meant to be a professional athlete turned businessman, building a commercial empire that has outlasted his playing career by more than 2 decades. Generations of athletes across every sport, from Kobe Bryant to countless others who have openly credited him as their inspiration, have cited Jordan's work ethic and competitive standard as the benchmark they chased. In 2020, the documentary series The Last Dance reintroduced Jordan's story to a new generation, becoming one of the most watched sports documentaries ever released, and reminding millions of viewers just how much adversity, injuries, doubt, physical intimidation, personal tragedy stood between him and the championships he eventually won. Perhaps most importantly, his story became a permanent symbol for anyone who has ever been told no. Coaches, teachers, and parents around the world still reference the story of Michael Jordan and his high school setback to remind young people that early rejection does not define final destiny. Michael Jordan himself put it best in one of his most famous statements: "I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." He didn't hide from his failures. He didn't pretend they never happened. He used them, turning every doubt into a checklist and every rejection into a reason to train harder the next morning. The lesson from his story isn't simply never give up, because that phrase alone is too easy, too small for what actually happened. The real lesson is this: rejection is information, not identity. Being told you're not ready doesn't mean you never will be. It means you have work to do. And the people who do that work, quietly, relentlessly, without needing anyone's permission, are the ones who eventually rewrite the story that others tried to write for them. Michael Jordan was left off the varsity roster he wanted at 15 years old. He became the greatest basketball player of all time. What list have you been left off? What rejection have you been carrying? Maybe it isn't the end of your story. Maybe, like Michael Jordan, it's simply the beginning. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments what's one rejection that ended up changing your life for the better. And if you want more real stories of ordinary struggle turning into extraordinary greatness, subscribe to Untold Legends, because the next story might be exactly what you need to hear today.